Welcome to the Livfiit Listens podcast, a safe space of growth, personal development, and overall wellness with your host, Olivia Catania. Diving into the realms of all things health, conscious living, mental expansion, and much more, this podcast is designed to help you evolve into your best self and live fit. Let's get into the show. What's up, you guys? Welcome back to the Livfiit Listens podcast. Today we're on episode 80. And if you're watching on YouTube, then you can tell that we have a change of friggin' scenery. So I am home in upstate New York. This is where I grew up. I'm not originally from Utah. I moved to Utah like 3 years ago. That was kind of always my home away from home. But this is actually my legitimate home. So this is where I grew up, and I'm here visiting for the week. And I figured, I realized before I left, I was like, damn, I never pre-recorded a podcast episode. So I was like, you know what? Don't fret. We'll just take the stuff on the go and record at home. So I literally this is my old podcast mic before I got the Shure MV7 mic. And I declared this one as like my traveling mic. So like when I'm on the go somewhere, this is the one that I'm going to take because it's like a little bit smaller. My gratitude for this episode, I feel like I have so many things that I want to say that I'm grateful for. First thing is I'm just grateful that I still have this childhood home to come back to. Like, this is the house that I truly grew up in. Like, when I came back from the hospital, we came back to this house. Like, my other siblings lived in other houses before this one, and I've lived in other houses too because my parents are divorced. So like my mom moved a lot, but like this, I'm not really the only OG. Like, this is my house. No, but I really am the only OG with this house. Like, they bought this house in 1998, and then I was born in 1999, and I was taken home directly to this house. So this house is like I don't know life without this house. This house has always been in my life, and I am still very thankful that I have this to come home to because we're going to get into kind of this whole genre into the episode, but I just know that not everyone still, has access to their childhood home for so many different reasons. And for me, I'm a very sentimental person. I do get attached to kind of inanimate objects, and I think that kind of goes back to my own personal childhood trauma, that I found kind of safety in inanimate things, I guess, because it was a little bit like less chaotic. That's a whole other thing that I'm not going to go into, like, further explain that. But anyways, I do feel like that's something that stems from childhood. But so I like inanimate objects, materialistic things, not really in a way of like Gucci bags, just like things that hold a lot of sentimental value or nostalgic value really mean a lot to me. And I have a hard time parting ways with that or letting go with that, or if they kind of have come to the end of their lifetime. So I am still very thankful that I do have this house to come home to. I also was feeling thankful that my travel home went super, super smoothly. I had a little bit of PTSD from my Costa Rica mishap, which, if you don't know, when I came home from Costa Rica, it literally took me 3 days, of trying to make the journey home. And then the other big thing that was coming to my mind was just that I'm really thankful that I have my dad here and just a relationship with him, and that I still am able to spend time with him and be here in this house specifically, just kind of like how we grew up, and be here with him also means a lot to me. So getting into this episode, this isn't really like my traditional like TED Talk structured episodes where I kind of have like a main endpoint with it and kind of like a lesson that I'm wanting to bring to you guys that I had learned. This is more so kind of just like free therapy for me, but I do just feel called to just kind of talk with you guys about some things that I'm going through being back home, because being back home always brings back so many emotions for me. And especially in the past like 3 years or so, I feel like I've really been experiencing big shifts, and I guess kind of lessons like every time I come home. And I know that a lot of my audience is around my age, and I just feel like, no, I might not have like a lesson, like a point with what I'm saying, but I do think there's definitely can be a lot of resonance that's going to be found. And what I'm saying, I feel like I'm probably going to end up oversharing in this episode, but what are you going to do? I think it's something that's important. And if it's me being vulnerable that helps people find relatability and resonance and they can relate to it, then, that's really all that matters. Also, I kind of also feel like I'm on like Oprah's freaking Soulful Sunday or whatever that is. I don't even know if that segment still exists, but I feel like since I'm on a couch, if you're not watching, if you're like, people who are viewing on YouTube know that I am sitting on a couch, and I feel like it's like back in those talk shows that want to be like quirky and relatable and like, let's like make it comfortable and vulnerable and be on a couch. That's kind of where I feel like. So really this whole entire atmosphere is giving therapy vibes. It's giving therapy. So anyways, wait, before we go any further, sorry guys, before we get into it, I also want to say that next episode is going to be a Q&A section / advice session. So if you have any questions or advice that you want and you want to be have the opportunity to maybe be included in next episode for me to address your question or the thing that you need advice on, go to my Instagram. Don't forget to follow me on there if you don't already, because within the next week, I'll be posting the Q&A on my story, and that's how you're able to submit questions for me to address in the podcast. But now, here we go, getting into my mega rant, just basically sharing some of my thoughts. I just feel like it's such a weird dynamic getting older, and I just feel like every time I'm home, especially like I said, within the past 3 years, I feel this super weird contrast between being weirdly triggered, coming back to my childhood home, and being in the same space where there wasn't always healthy dynamics and there was a lot of chaos and there was a lot of pain growing up. But at the same time, it's also weirdly healing to my inner child, being in the same place that essentially hurt you in a way, and being here with newfound perspectives and just greater awareness, compassion, and just consciousness to be able to see your past through a different lens, to be more at peace with it, So it's I feel like every time I come home as I'm older, I'm 24 now, in case you don't know, it's it's just that really weird contrast between the two, and that's why just so much emotion kind of comes up within me when I'm home. So I kind of want to speak on the duality and kind of both subjects of both of those. Starting off with feeling triggered, I feel triggered in the sense that things are changing, and this might be niche, but I also feel like a lot of people would maybe be able to relate. My parents are divorced, and my dad has been with I technically have had a stepmom since I was 6. My parents got divorced when I was 4. So she's still very much so in our life. And, as she does what a normal partner would do, she helps my dad, redo different things with the house, upgrade the house, all that sort of stuff. And so every time I come home, it's something is different and things are changing. And honestly, within the past 5-ish years, I think she's when she officially moved in with my dad completely full time. And so this house is now also her house. And I'm going to be I'm getting emotional now because I'm going to be honest, this has been something that's been really hard for me. And I almost feel stupid when I get upset about it, because I know that so many worse things that could happen, and it's not even necessary. It's not her fault. And I don't share this to come at anyone or expose anyone in my family. It's me just trying to share my own experience and kind of what it does for me. And we've had open, I want to say open outbursts with this in my family, but we've addressed this topic in my family, but just my room is different. My childhood room is different because she's redone things very classic, super nostalgic, iconic things that were always in my room from when I grew up, are no longer there. Cabinets in the house that were always iconic, junk drawers or the medicine cabinet. And it sounds so stupid, but things that always were the way they were are not what they used to be anymore. And again, it sounds so silly, little things, I'm talking about a medicine cabinet. I'm talking about a junk drawer we used to have with all of our school supplies. I'm talking about random, wallpaper that used to be on my wall. But it's for some reason, I need to collect myself, but for some reason, those little things are they stand for so much more to me. They're the epitome of our childhood, of my siblings' childhood, of how we grew up. And it's of course things are always going to evolve. Of course things are always going to update, right? And it's of course I'm so happy for my dad. He deserves to have, he doesn't have, 4 young kids anymore. We're grown up, we're out of the house, and it's he can't, what is he supposed to do? Live with the junk drawer of all of our arts and crafts from when we were 6? No, but, and that's the part where I understand. But the other part of me, it's just it's never gonna not feel like the stepmom and came in and took over the house. Do you know what I mean? I truly feel I would feel so different if my parents were together, and it would feel just the natural upgrading that happens when kids go on to leave the house. The hardest part is just that it wasn't my mom who did it. And so it's just is always gonna feel it's the stepmom that came in and took over, you know? And it's like, and of course, when she moved in, like some of her kid stuff, you know, we all had to mesh together, right? So it's like, and just to put this out there, like we're not close with her kids. So it's not like, I know some people grow up with step siblings and like I see them as siblings. Like I still remember that when that happened, where I was talking to people and they classified their step siblings as like full on their siblings. Like they identified like there's 6 of us and that like included their, like I never have included my step siblings in my sibling count. So, just like her kids stuff is in my room, like her daughter's dresser is now my dresser in my room. And it just is so, it's just weird. It's just a very interesting dynamic. And again, I know this isn't reinventing the wheel. I know this isn't revolutionary. I know so many people go through this, but it just has been something that's been really hard. And it's still triggering for me when I come back to the space, because it's like, I have this idea of what home was. And so when I feel like I've come back and I feel like, you know, it's different, it just is really weird. It feels like this isn't, you know, this isn't the house I grew up in. This isn't my childhood. And I have this idea, this expectation of what it is when I come back, and it's not that, you know, like my stepmom has grandkids. There's toys in here for her grandkids. Her grandkids stuff are here. And so it just is this weird dynamic sometimes that this isn't my house anymore. Or it's almost weird because since we still have it, it feels like, you know, it's getting taken over or I have to share it. It's just as weird, and it's almost hard for me to put into words. And I feel like that's why it's kind of created some interesting dynamics between my dad and my stepmom, because it's like they don't fully understand it, you know? But I think sometimes the hardest thing of all of it is when I, you know, how it's meshed together, and her, you know, my stepmom stuff is in here and her grandkid stuff are in here and her kid stuff are in here. I think the reason why it stings is because I feel like it still puts salt on the very old wound. Like this happened so long ago, but still just the deep-seated wound that we don't have a family unit and we never will. And just salt on the wounds that my parents aren't together, that my mom isn't here anymore, that, you know, I was not expecting to get this upset in this episode or this emotional. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry that if this is hard to listen to, but I think that's what it is. It's like, because before this, anything that was here, not all of it, but a majority of the things were here because my mom had put them there, or they were here when my mom was here, you know? And so it's just is like kind of was almost kind of like the final step to finally getting her removed from the space, you know, which rightfully so, they're not together. But I just feel like it was kind of like, you know, it wasn't in completion, even though they had been, you know, apart for over 20 years and stuff, even 5 years ago, but like still having her stuff in this house, like weirdly still kept her energy here. And so now having so many of those things, whether it's being just pictures on the wall that were here when she was here, or, you know, that her and my dad worked to hang the photos up. It's like having those pictures not be there anymore. It's like little things like that. It's like kind of the last ounce of my mom's touch and essence is no longer here in the home. Aside from all that, it's just like every time I'm here now and that things are different, it just is reiterating to the fact that I'm growing up and that my life isn't here anymore. This isn't my reality. This isn't my everyday, you know, like now it just turned from something that was every single day of my life, of who I am, is such a small piece of who I am now. And it's like, when I think of my life when I'm in Utah, I still will look fondly on this house and where we grew up, because I do love where I grew up. And so sometimes it's like that harsh, weird reality when you realize like what you're missing doesn't exist anymore. Like your idea of what your home was doesn't exist anymore. And like, I know this extends so far beyond, even if you have your childhood home, like people's towns change, like so many things upgrade, you know, it's like, it's just so many things, you know, it's like the same people aren't in my town anymore. It's just obviously new generations have come in, and that's just like a part of life. And I know it is, but again, I'm just a very sentimental, nostalgic person. So it's still sometimes hard to process like, oh, the home you think of just doesn't exist. And I know this is such a big thing that's just like a part of life, and I just feel like I'm in that phase, and every time, because like I've said, I've been going through this for like 3 years now slowly. It's like every time I do come back here, it's like I'm getting more and more at peace with it. I'm accepting it more and more. It's becoming clearer and clearer to me that it just isn't the same era, and I can find peace in that, and I need to find peace and contentment and fondness in my area, like of my turn growing up in this town, and now it's other people's turns. And I feel weirdly free, like coming more into acceptance of getting ready to start my own life. You know what I mean? Like every time I'm here and I'm like, okay, this isn't what it used to be. Like this isn't what I used to think of as home. It's not the same home. It's like it makes me feel ready to know it's my time eventually, in the next 5-10 year stretch, to be starting my own family and start my own life and get my own home to really set up and all that sort of stuff. But there's just always this weird sense of mourning, I feel like, that takes place when I come back to my childhood home, when I come back to the town that I grew up in. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it's a very natural phase of life. And I know everyone has their own situations. Like maybe the town you live in doesn't feel like anything changes. Because I guess for me, like the town I live in, definitely it also feels like nothing changes. Like it feels like the same day over and over again. And the thing is, I know if I were to live here full time, I would go crazy and wouldn't be able to cherish it. So I know I feel all this nostalgia because I went away and came back, which is another reason why I'm such a believer that you should leave your hometown for at least an extended period of time, because I feel like it really just shows you how to appreciate it, or it allows you to remind yourself of how precious where you grew up is, and how you're able to cherish it and all that sort of stuff. But then the other contrary of all this is how weirdly healing it is for me to be here at the same time. But like it's healing to me for a completely different reason. Like it has nothing to do with all those same things and concepts that I just talk about. Like it's weirdly healing to me because that quote, like, it's powerful to go back to the environments, the people, the places that hurt you or like triggered you, and being able to be back in those environments and feel peace now. Like where there was once fear, you now feel peace. And that's kind of what my situation is here. Like it's weird being in a place that used to have so much chaos, and of course there were so many good memories, but there was also a lot of like traumatic memories that always seemed to trump everything. And it's weird being back in the place that used to have so much chaos, and now it is so much better, right? Not all my family's here. Like we've all grown up. And so it's just interesting, like being back in a place that's now so much more, I want to say just it's better now and it's more matured. It's not as chaotic and, messy as it was in the past. And so that, like being able to be in the same space with having a safer environment, feels really good to my inner child. And also being in the same space where now I'm much more conscious and aware, where I can look back on those times, like in the same rooms of things that I remember happening, like being able to look back at those times with more compassion and understanding, because I'm older now. So I just understand what my parents were going through. I understand in general how hard just those times could be given the circumstances of what my family was going through at the time. And so it's like, it's just weird because I'm able to look at it from a softer lens, as opposed to the lens of like a very confused, fearful child. In the past, this is gonna get me, but it almost feels like I'm back to tell my inner child that it's all gonna be okay and that she's gonna be okay. It just has been it's very powerful, being in the same space that used to hurt you and finding peace. And so I just feel like energetically, I'm like going back to tell my inner child she's going to be okay, but it's also weirdly just healing for myself in general, like facing the places that had so much chaos and finding peace in it again, and being able to be in the same space without having it be so chaotic. And with that, growing up, like I personally love our house here. Like we live in such a beautiful town, and so there were so many great things growing up that I feel like we weren't always able to fully enjoy, because there'd be arguing or whatever the case may be that would kind of ruin it, to be honest. And so it's like also weirdly healing to be able to come back and be able to do the things that I used to do as a kid from a better space now, where there's less chaos and I can actually enjoy it, and I can kind of stick up for myself. I can dictate more so the tempo, the energy, the dynamic of the situations that are going on, instead of just being a kid and just being completely victim to whatever the heck was going on, you know? So that's also been really healing, and it's like almost given my soul a second chance to like be able to enjoy the beauty of what's going on without being in like a toxic environment in terms of the relationships with the people around you, you know what I mean? And this is like why I'm so passionate about giving my kids a very like just safe, you know, prosperous atmosphere. And I want to do everything I can in my power to not just pollute my children's environment. Like I want them to be able to just be a kid. I want them to be able to be so present where they're able just to enjoy where they are, and their only job is to just have fun and to be in the moment and be a freaking kid. And every time I feel like I come home, it reminds me of just more of like the control and power, not in an egoic way, in an empowered way that I have as an adult to be able to provide that to my children. I think growing up, I was a little bit nervous that it just was out of our control. You know, like I'm saying, I just was like, when you're that young, you're just like a victim to your environment. You know what I mean? And so I wasn't even aware of kind of the control that you can have just to be able to dictate, you know, and declare the energy in the space. I didn't really understand that when I was little. So knowing now the power that I do have as an adult and how much, you know, you actually can dictate and you're not just the victim to someone else's words as you are when you're a kid. It's like I feel so much more empowered to give my kids a very safe space, and a space where they feel excited and happy to play. I really didn't realize I was going to be this like emotional throughout this episode. I'm not going to lie. I'm really truly sorry if that was hard to listen to, because I kept being like, but I hope the, you know, overall message still got across. I think, you know, the biggest thing that I feel like I'm going through and learning is like how much I love just the concept of inner child healing. And I think it's different forms of healing are more important for other people, and you know, vice versa. It's super subjective. But for me, like inner child healing and staying close to my inner child, I know is like really crucial for me to help with my triggers and my toxic patterns and all that sort of stuff. So staying close to my inner child is super important, and it plays a really big role in my overall healing as an individual. And I think during times like this, whether it being in regards to your childhood home or maybe trying to rekindle past relationships with family members that were very toxic, like whatever this looks like for you, I think it's really important to support, not only connect with your inner child, but also to really support your inner child through these times, because it's just kind of inevitable when you are experiencing or when you're reconnecting with what was once so triggering for you. Like it's just bound to hit triggers. They're kind of like little landmines within you that were so deep rooted at this point. They're so covered up, right? But there's still trauma and there's still sensitive points for you that you don't even realize they're sensitive until they're touched. You know what I mean? It's kind of like a bruise you don't realize you have until someone touches it. You're like, ow, like what the heck? That really hurt. That's kind of exactly what a trigger is. That's exactly what these inner child wounds are. And so doing what you can to really support your inner child and nurture your inner child during these times will, I feel like, help you have more compassion and be able to go through these healing processes when new triggers come up in a more compassionate, sensitive, understanding way to give it support. Just because I feel like it's just kind of like, you know, when you're going through something and you just kind of want some empathy from someone and they're just really harsh on you and they don't give you that nurturement. I don't know if that's a word, but you know, they don't really feel like, they don't give you compassion. They don't give you empathy. They don't give you understanding. Like that's so important to give yourself during these times, because it's like, even this is a perfect example of how triggered and sensitive I feel about the house being upgraded. Like that's such a classic thing. And like so many people would be like, dude, it's like, of course they're going to eventually get rid of your best friend's wallpaper, like in your wall in your room. Like it eventually has to happen. Like you're 24. Like, so I get it. But for me, that's something that just is very sensitive for me for whatever reason. And for me, it's like I could be cold to myself and gaslight myself and just not give myself the compassion and empathy. But that's not going to help support my inner child and allow myself to actually thoroughly heal from it. So give yourself grace. Be soft with your inner child. Like remember who you're speaking to when you get upset about things. Like you're not speaking to the shell of a human that you are. Like you're speaking to 6-year-old you. You really are. And it's like, how would you speak to a 6-year-old? You know what I mean? Like they have big emotions where they don't know how to fully work through them. And that's exactly the concept of the inner child healing. It's like you still have those emotions that were never cleared from when you were anything below freaking 10 years old, whatever. You didn't know, you didn't know how to emotionally regulate. You didn't have the emotional intelligence to talk yourself through things. So that emotion that you still felt that maybe was ignored from your parents or from your older siblings because you weren't able to communicate how you were feeling and whatever, and they thought you were just having a temper tantrum or whatever the case may be, or just maybe trapped perspectives that you have. All of that gets stored in your energy body, which is still carrying with you to this day. And so those are what's getting pinged when certain triggers happen in your life. And so you need to give yourself compassion and full attention and empathy to be able to address those triggers. Remember, you're talking to just 6-year-old you, that's still emotion is still within you. Talk to yourself how you would talk to not a 6-year-old in the sense of dumbing down, but give yourself the same empathy and compassion that you would give a 6-year-old who doesn't know how to process their emotions. And give that to yourself to allow yourself to fully feel your emotions, process them, and let them go, with the hope that you will finally be able to clear it and you won't be as sensitive to the triggers. Clearly, I'm still sensitive because I'm still crying about it, but we're all healing in our own timeline. Isn't that right? So for the affirmation for this episode, pretty much is going hand in hand with what I said. It says, I nurture my inner child through the stages of growing up. I nurture my inner child through the stages of growing up. Growing up is such an emotional thing. And I just feel like also the older generation of our parents, they grew up so freaking fast. And more so in the sense of like, I feel like at least for my immediate guardians that were in my life, always the expectation was like, after you're done with school, you're getting married and you're starting a family ASAP. You know, like all my parents, like they were already married and like having kids at my age. And so I do feel like I can't speak for my entire generation, but I do feel like the older generation above us just overall grew up faster in the sense they just started their own life. And so it just wasn't like before they knew what they were rolling into making their own family, you know? And so I feel like right now, a lot of people my generation are growing up. They're separating from their childhood of growing up, but they haven't really made their own home yet. So we're all kind of in this really weird in between of like having, of being away from our childhood home, but not having our own home. So we're in this weird in between of never kind of feeling like anything is home. So we're really fully going through the entirety of what it feels like to be uprooted from what you view as your home, So that's it, you guys. Thank you guys so much for listening today. I really thank you for listening to me vent in my therapy. If you are interested, I am hosting a retreat in Bali. I still just want to make sure I keep reiterating this to you guys, just in case you're feeling a soul pull, because I've been getting some messages on Instagram with people like, hey, I'm kind of thinking about it, but I know y'all are thinking about it. Okay. I know it. And I totally understand since it's super far away. Like I understand kind of having nerves, second thoughts, doubts, what ifs, anxieties. I totally understand it. I just want to say, if you're getting a soul pull, you are getting the pull for a reason. If you're getting synchronicities, if you're getting signs, that's the universe trying to nudge you. Nothing outside of your comfort zone is ever going to feel comfortable. But with that, nothing within your comfort zone is going to allow you to grow. That I need to write down because that was a good one. So you just need to understand, like, if you're looking to grow, it's not going to feel comfortable. Like all these anxieties, nervousness, all that stuff is so freaking normal. And I remember I made a podcast episode about this called F Your Comfort Zone. And I made that after I went to Tahiti, because when I went to Tahiti, that's like in French Polynesia. It's almost to freaking New Zealand. So it's like really far away. It's like halfway between kind of like Hawaii, I want to say, and New Zealand. And I was going to meet my friend Rachel, who I met in Hawaii. And for some reason, I was so hesitant to go. And I was just thinking about it. And I literally didn't book my ticket till 3 days before because I could not decide what I wanted to do. I ended up having to spend freaking $1,500 on the plane ticket there. But I just could not decide what I wanted to do. And then I went, and to this day, it was like one of the most magnificent places I've ever been. Like literally, I think New Zealand and that has been like the most gorgeous places I've ever been to in my entire life. I have zero regrets, and I was so juiced up when I came back home. But I was also pissed at myself because I was like, I could not believe I was 72 hours just from not going. Like, I was just so mad that I almost completely missed out on the opportunity just simply because of our mind. That's the thing. It wasn't a soul pull like that. It wasn't an intuitional thing that was telling me I have a gut feeling. When I went to write down, because if you actually, maybe you guys can do this too, because it also helped me. I remember like I wrote down, or like I just thought to myself, like, okay, what are the reasons why I don't want to go? Like, tell me the tangible reasons why I don't want to go. And I literally didn't have any reasoning. It was, my only answer was, I don't know, I'm feeling anxious. I feel nervous. Like, that was literally it. There wasn't anything tangible telling me why I shouldn't be going. There wasn't any gut feeling of like, I just feel icky about it. It was just nervousness, and that's just simply our mind, our egoic mind doing what it's doing its job. Our egoic's mind is to keep us in a safe and familiar environment. That's just what it always does. And so that was really just my egoic mind telling me not to go, but I know my higher self would want me to expand, would want me to experience new cultures, would want me to experience new places and do something that pushed my limits and just made me stretch my soul. And that's exactly what that trip did. So I feel like it just really applies to something like this. Even now, I am nervous to fly to Bali. It's far. I've never been that far. Like, the farthest I've been was to New Zealand, but I know it's going to be something so amazing. I'm going to be so proud of myself afterwards. And I know how great of the container it feels when you're in a group of supportive women with like-minded goals. And I know that it's going to feel so good. It's kind of like we're all catching each other. You know, it's like we're not going alone at all. Like, you have a whole group of women catching you when you get off that airplane, quite literally, to pick you up. So if you're feeling a pull, I am hosting a retreat in Bali, May 2nd to May 9th of 2024. It's an 8-day retreat. We're going to be doing journaling, meditating, some movement workshops where we'll do some group workouts together. There's going to be 6 workshops in total. We're going to be also practicing gratitude, affirmations, all that good stuff, as well as adventuring around the country and seeing its beauty, and make sure that we're staying active, because I'm an active girly when I like to travel. So the information is down below. You do have the option to either pay over 6, 12, or up to 18 months if you choose to do their payment plan, or if you do not want to do their payment plan, only 25% of the ticket price is due upon booking. All the information is on that trip page, as well as the cancellation policy, all that sort of stuff. If you have any questions about it, please feel free to DM me. Thank you guys so much for taking your time to listen to this. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to leave a rating and a review, or share it with a friend and a loved one, or post it on social media and tag me so I can see who's listening. I really appreciate you guys' time and love and support and just hearing me today and holding space for me. This podcast is therapy for me as much as it's therapy for you guys. So I really appreciate you guys. I'm sending you so much love, and I hope you have a beautiful week. Peace out.